Welcome to More Than a Therapy Couch, the podcast where we go beyond the walls of traditional therapy sessions. I'm your host, Tiana. In a world that's constantly changing, so are the ways we navigate our mental and emotional health. We're here to embrace the notion that healing and growth extend far beyond the walls of a therapy room. Throughout this podcast, we'll be joined by a diverse array of experts and everyday individuals with compelling stories to help bring awareness to whatever you may be facing. We'll unpack the complexities of the human experience, tackle taboo topics, and challenge the stigmas surrounding mental health. So grab your emotional support water bottle, find a comfy spot, and join us as we embark on a journey that goes more than a therapy couch. Let the session begin. As a reminder, the topics discussed are for educational purposes only and are not meant to be taken as clinical advice. If you are concerned about you or a loved one's mental health, consult a mental health professional or call SAMHSA's 24-hour hotline at 1-800-662-HELP. Welcome back to More Than a Therapy Couch. I'm your host, Tiana, and today we're diving into a topic that many of us may find particularly challenging, the grief that can resurface during the holiday season. Joining me is Aly Resnick, the founder and owner of Tree of Life Counseling Center. With her extensive clinical background in grief counseling, Aly brings valuable insight on navigating these complex emotions. So whether you're experiencing loss yourself or supporting someone who is, this episode is for you. Welcome, Aly.
Thank you.
So Aly, for the viewers, can you just tell them a little bit about your clinical background with working with grief?
Sure. So I feel like just kind of starting out, grief is everywhere. It's not just about death and dying. So anyone who's worked with trauma has worked with grief in some way. So for me, I started out working for hospice. And, well, I didn't start out there, but I worked with hospice, and I really became interested in working with grief because it helped me to understand trauma, right? And a lot of people don't understand what death and dying looks like and what that means for them and how it affects other people. They understand, that person's not here anymore or those things, but they don't realize that grief also expands to losing a job, losing a friend. You grieve moments, right? Like, so all these different things changes. COVID changed things. People experience an enormous amount of grief after COVID because nothing was the same anymore. They missed high school graduations, college graduations, all of these things. So for me, that's how I started with grief, and it just continued.
From your experience, why do the holidays tend to intensify feelings of grief for many people, and how does it differ during this time of year?
Yeah, so this time is particularly difficult for a lot of people, especially around those who have lost somebody, because their presence is obvious, right? They're not physically at the Thanksgiving table. They're not physically at the holiday table. And for some people, that's really challenging to look around a room and not see their loved one. So they tend to have more symptoms of, depression, which come out, which is, it's okay. And there's services around that, and we can work together. I'm a therapist. There's multiple therapists, obviously, right? So there's ways around that. But it definitely comes out more during the holidays because of that.
What are some common myths or misconceptions about how people should handle grief specifically during this time?
I love this question. So many times when someone is grieving, they're like, oh, it's okay. It just takes time. I hate that, because here's the thing. That infers some kind of like negative connotation that if it's taking longer than it is, then you're doing something wrong, right? Grief is not linear. What happens is it takes time, and it takes space, and it takes as much as you need to be able to go through it and grow through it, right? Mm-hmm. And hence our logo, right? Mm-hmm. Grow through it. But that's part of it. Like, you have to grow and learn through everything that you're doing. So grief, when someone says to you, oh, don't worry, it's going to be okay next year. No, it might not be. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay that it's not going to be okay. It just, when you're ready, you're ready. There's 5 stages of grief. You have to go through all of them, and they don't come in an order. Sometimes 3 years later, you're going through a stage of denial again, and you're like, no, that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. That's normal.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the 5 stages of grief?
So there's 5 stages of grief, and it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. What happens is that when you're going through the stages, one day you can be in denial, and then the next minute, honestly, you could be, okay, I've accepted it. It's just, it's a process, and you go through it.
And I'm sure, too, when you're going through your day-to-day, you may be driving home from work, and you're like, oh, I'm going to call. I think you have that moment of, like, realization of, oh, I maybe can't do that anymore.
Absolutely, right? And that's why it's a perfect example of grief doesn't just happen anywhere. Like, you want to tell your grandparent, right, that, so-and-so is pregnant, or I got an A on my test, and you can't, right? So the grief starts all over again. And it's, again, during the holidays, it's difficult because you're sitting around this table and all the things, especially in my family, like we at the Thanksgiving table, we all go around and we say what we're thankful for over the year, right? And that person's missing. So that's sometimes hard. And so I think a lot of families like feel that. And that's the one time of year, like everyone gets together. Somehow everyone gets along during that time, and we all get together for an hour.
Only a limited time.
Exactly. And then the fighting begins again.
You're like, all right, now I'm back at home. But we're going to take a little bit of a commercial break, and then we're going to deep dive more into how grief is affecting people's day-to-day lives.
Perfect.
This episode is brought to you by Confections of a Rockstar Bake Shop and Catering. Are you looking for a sweet treat or custom cake and desserts for your next event? Stop into their Asbury Park location where everything is made from scratch using high-quality ingredients. Custom orders can be placed online at www.confectionsofarockstar.com or by calling 732-455-3510 today.
And we're back. So we went over the 5 stages of grief and what those can kind of look like. So now, while someone's in these 5 stages, what are some like coping strategies that you would recommend for someone who's struggling, particularly around the holidays?
Yeah. So what I do with my clients and what seems to have been helpful, journal. Just journal. Write a letter to that person. Let them know, hey, these are all the things that have happened since the time that you've been gone. And obviously, if it's less than a year, then that makes more sense. But if it's more than a year, it's here's an update of my life for the last year. You're kind of getting it out there, putting it out there, letting them know, like, hey, I'm here. And whatever you believe in after this, after life, whatever, that's, on you. I believe that they can hear us. I don't know, maybe that's wishful thinking, but it's fine. So for me, I write it all down. I tell my clients, write it all down, write them a letter. Let everyone know like how you're feeling. If you're, having a hard time going into a family dinner, just let your loved ones know, hey, like I'm just struggling a little bit but I'm okay. That way, no one says anything like, are you okay? Because that's the worst. When you're not feeling well, you're like, are you okay?
Big group of people, and people are like, are you okay? How are you doing? And it's like, I'm fine.
I'm great. Everything's fine. Right? That feeling is so weird. So just kind of letting people know and just taking your time and be patient with yourself. It's okay.
So for someone who is with their family, if they are having a hard time, what are kind of like your thoughts on people deciding whether or not they want to like skip the holidays entirely to just avoid being like triggered?
Well, I understand that. And for some, that could be a good thing, if that's part of their setting boundaries or what that looks like for them. But sometimes it's not great to be alone, right? Sometimes we need to force ourselves to kind of get out and be uncomfortable because that's how the healing begins. But, that's case by case basis. Not every person or family or situation is the same. Obviously, I wouldn't want someone to put themselves in a situation where they've truly felt uncomfortable, where it could do more damage than good. But when you're feeling depressed and when you're feeling down, it's good to kind of distract yourself with certain things. Your favorite movie, your favorite person, and you go out for a walk, So it's good to be with somebody. So I say try if you can.
Yeah, you may surprise yourself too. You may decide that you want to, I don't know, go out and meet up with some friends that you maybe normally wouldn't.
Yeah.
This is something I actually recently learned in my therapy is like if you are thinking or feeling a certain way and you don't want to be feeling that way, do the complete opposite.
Exactly.
So you want to stay home, you want to watch a movie rather than hang out with friends. Okay, no, purposely go out and put yourself out there, and it can be very hard. And no one's saying like a week after you need to be going out and like meeting up with friends, but that's why it's a different process for everyone. And you just need to kind of navigate what works best for you. But on the other hand, how can someone manage feelings of guilt if they start to experience happiness during the holidays while they still are having that feeling of grief?
So that is so normal. Mm-hmm. Every time they do something that they're actually smiling and laughing, they'll tend to feel a little bit guilty for laughing or for smiling because they should be grieving, right? And I tell everyone to take a look in the mirror before you go out and do anything and tell yourself it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to have a feeling other than sadness. It's okay that I laugh. It's okay that I cry. It's okay that I hysterical laugh, right? It's okay that I laugh and cry at the same time. Everything's okay. And in those moments, if you start to feel a little bit guilty, take a moment, reflect on why you feel this way. Why am I feeling guilty? Mm-hmm. Did I just laugh? Did I cry? Like what's happening? And kind of talk to yourself through it to know like, it's okay that I'm here. I am here on earth. Unfortunately, that person isn't anymore, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be living my life. Mm-hmm. And kind of just reframing that in every moment. And that does become overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But I think the more we do it, the more we heal, right? And it's exactly what you just said before. You challenge yourself with all these things. You challenge yourself to think differently. You challenge yourself to go out. You challenge yourself to feel different things. Mm-hmm. This is a process, and it's stinky sometimes.
It is sometimes, and it's definitely unfortunate. But I think another thing that I don't know if a lot of listeners know, but you can feel two feelings at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you don't have to be, because I'm happy, I can't be sad, or because I'm sad, I can't be happy. Like, you can still have both of those co-occurring feelings and still feel valid with how you're feeling.
Absolutely. Like right now, I am excited to be on this podcast, but super anxious because, everyone's watching. Mm-hmm. But I'm still here. I'm challenging, right? Like you can do those things. Mm-hmm. You can feel multiple things at once. And as long as you challenge yourself, you're okay.
And then at the end, you're going to be like, wow, that was so much fun.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. How many times have you wanted to do something and you're like, I really don't want to go. And then you go and you're like, oh my God, that was actually so much fun. Mm-hmm. Right? Everything in life is like that.
And you won't know unless you try.
Exactly.
Speaking of trying different things out, so what does self-care kind of have to do with all of this? So especially during the holidays, you're experiencing these feelings. What are certain ways that people can kind of like give back to themselves during this time?
I love that. Because during the holidays, we're worrying about everyone else and giving to everyone else who's taking care of us. Mm-hmm. And I use this analogy often. It's the cup, right? You have to fill your own cup. And if your cup is empty, you can't give to anyone else. So during the holidays, for self-care, I think it's important to put yourself first, right? Learn your boundaries, set your boundaries, really respect your boundaries. Hear yourself. Like if there's a day where you're just like, I really don't want to go to that, reflect why, understand it, and give yourself some grace. Or, go for that massage, go for Reiki. It's like my favorite thing to do. Not just during the holidays, but in general. Do those things, take care of yourself, eat healthy as much as you can because we're all going to indulge ourselves on holiday things, right?
Just have to be mindful.
Exactly, right? But, think about what you're putting in your body first. Like don't overload yourself on carbs and then walk around and then go, I wonder why I'm tired. Well, clearly, and that's clearly my problem. I do that. But, take care of yourself, take a nap, make sure you're sleeping right, drinking water. That's a huge thing. It sounds so silly, but it really does help.
It happens sometimes. I'm like, Allison, my head hurts. I'm like, I had a really rough day. I don't know. And then I started thinking, I'm like, did I eat? Oh, I'm probably hangry. You only had coffee today.
Yep.
Okay. It's almost 1:00. Okay.
See? And routines. Routines are huge for self-care. Getting up, going to the gym, not that I do, but, going for a walk, anything. And then drinking, coffee, drinking water, anything. But like, staying on a routine and then sticking to it.
So we are going to take one more commercial
Okay.
break. And when we get back, we are going to be talking about how friends and family can support their loved ones if they are struggling with grief during this time. So we'll be right back. Feeling stuck mentally and physically? It may be time to supplement your self-care practices with some holistic healing options. Mind the Body Holistic Wellness in Freehold, New Jersey proudly offers a variety of healing modalities, including Reiki, massage therapy, reflexology, and Himalayan hot stone massages. For more information or to book an appointment, visit www.mindthebodyhw.com. Now back to our show. And we're back. So, how can friends and family support someone who's grieving during the holiday season?
Yeah. I think the best way to support someone is to truly ask what they need. And I know that sounds silly, but sometimes, people will say, oh, how can I help you? And when someone feels overwhelmed or depressed or anxious, they're not going to say, hey, I really need like an accountability partner today, right? Like they're not going to say that. So it's saying to someone, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Can I make you dinner? Can I bring you somewhere? Do you need to go to a doctor? Like, what can I do for you? How can I support you? What's the best way for me to support you, right? Do you want to FaceTime tonight and then laugh? You want to watch a movie together? Like anything silly to kind of get them out of that space. But just really like, and if they need the space to sit and cry, be there for them. But just ask them like, what's the best way for me to support you right now?
Another thing that some people may not even realize is even if you are the person that's like going through that grief, even if you don't know what you like exactly need in that moment, you could be like, I don't really know what I need, but like,
Fair.
I don't really want to be alone right now. Do you think
Fair.
you can come over? We can sit in silence. We can watch a movie like you said. Like we can do a bunch of different things if you'd like, but it's whatever you're willing to. And I think by you reaching out and letting that person know that, it's like, hey, I'm here however you want me to be, and what you're feeling is valid, and you don't need to go through it by yourself. Because I think some people think, oh, well, no one understands what I'm going through. How could anyone understand what I'm going through?
Correct. Yeah. I remember when my best friend died. It was right before COVID. It was March of 2020. And I thought no one would understand what I was going through. And I'm a grief therapist, right? Like, I know the things to expect. I know what to tell people. So that doesn't mean I'm an expert, right? But I thought the world was going to end. This person was everything to me. Like he, we were together forever. Like he was my best friend. And when he died, I remember my friend Marina said to me, well, how can I support you? And I remember looking at her going, I don't know, but can you just come sit with me because I'm scared? And she was like, absolutely. She came over. We sat in silence for like 4 hours. And if you know the two of us, you know that that is not a
Not
thing,
like you guys.
right? But that's what I needed in that moment. And I think that she did that for me, opened my eyes to know that, yeah, grief can really feel lonely, but that doesn't mean you have to be alone. And so I think that's an important thing for people to know too.
Absolutely. So we kind of talked about how your family members and loved ones can support you if you are going through some grieving during this time. So for those family and loved ones who, again, still want to be there to help support that person, are there certain things that they should kind of avoid saying when they do want to help someone?
Yes. One of the things that always kills me when people at funerals or wakes or anything say is they're in a better place. That is so invalidating for people to hear because they may not be in a better place, right? Like we don't know what's next. None of us know that. But for them, their loved one, this was their better place. Now, that doesn't mean that, if someone had cancer and they were suffering or whatever, that doesn't mean that we're wishing that they continue to suffer. And I know that the intent of saying that is say like, oh, they're no longer in pain. And that's fine. However, when saying that to someone like, oh, they're in a better place, that just means their place here was not great. And the person hearing that feels invalidated and their feelings are like, okay. And it's just like, okay, great. Another person to tell me it's going to be okay. They're in a better place. Okay. My thoughts and prayers are with you. Right? Like how many times have you heard those things? And yes, the intent again is to be nice and to truly care about someone, but it's different to say my thoughts and prayers are with you versus I'm going to come over on Friday and we're going to sit, or I'm going to pick you up and have coffee with you. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference.
Yes.
Being there for someone and saying you're there for someone is very different.
It's very, very different. And I think a lot of people who are probably even listening to this episode, depending on how old they are and what they've been through in their life, some people may realize, unfortunately, when they do lose someone who they truly have in their life.
For sure.
Because all these people they love to say, I'm sorry for your loss. How can I be there for you? But again, what you said is huge. If you're not like in the trenches with me, like snot boogers on the couch and everything, like, are you
really there?
Are you really there?
Right.
And obviously everyone has their own thing, but we now live in a society where you have a phone. You can take 5 minutes out of your day, even if you're not able to maybe make a home cooked meal or anything like that. You can send a message, hey, I'm thinking of you. Hey, did you eat dinner? Did you have breakfast? Send breakfast to their job or to their house.
DoorDash, Uber Eats. It's so easy now, right? And again, if you don't have the money to do that, that's fine. But exactly what you said before, right? Just thinking of you. How you doing? Just thinking of you. That means everything to some people.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes they may not be able to reach out first. So the fact that you're reaching out is starting that conversation.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they may not even be able to respond. But just seeing that message makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
So if you're hesitant to send the message, just do it. Just do it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. The worst that will happen is you get ignored. And that's okay.
But at least that person knows that you were thinking about them.
Absolutely.
And even if it brought them a little bit of happiness in that moment, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So I know this part may be a little bit harder and a more in-depth kind of answer, but how can parents talk to their children about grief, especially if they are also struggling with their own grief during the holidays?
It really depends on the age of the child. Because, children who are young, they don't typically understand. And it also depends on your belief system. Like we're Jewish, right? And my family, and we don't believe in heaven and hell, right? So like when explaining to children, it's not like we could say, oh, grandma went to heaven. That's not a thing for us. So that really just depends on religion also, right? So for me, I kind of keep it brief. And I kind of just, when I would work with kids, I would say to them, okay, well, this person's no longer with us right here. And right now, we would use this book. It was called The Invisible String. And we would have them draw a heart, and they would write their name on it. And we would attach a string, and we would just, kind of send it up with a balloon. And whenever that was there, they would know they could just pull the string and know whoever they sent up was going to come talk to them. That's just one book, that's one idea. Kids understand like object permanency, right? Like, so if they're not physically there, then they don't exist. So it's kind of like showing a picture and saying, grandma's not here with us anymore, but, we could still talk to her, things like that. And it's okay to show your kids or anyone in your life some sadness. It's okay to let them watch you cry. It's okay for them to see grief because they need to understand the emotions. They shouldn't be afraid of it. Death is not something to be afraid of. I think there's a lot of taboo feelings around it. No one talks about it, right? So when we get to the end of our life, no one really knows what we want because no one's talked about it. If you introduce those things ahead of time and let them know that these feelings are okay to have, and you're showing them, then it's not so scary, if that makes sense. And it also helps you because you're talking about it.
Absolutely. And I think that even like builds the connection with like you and your child stronger because it's like, oh, parents are feeling like this. Like I can feel like this too. Yeah. It's okay to.
Okay.
But I think on the other hand, like if you don't show your child that this is how you're feeling and you're feeling and coping with all of it, they may say, oh, well, this is not something we talk about. We never bring this up, and it's hush hush. And it's that's not how I think, everyone, like you said, has like their own opinions and beliefs, but I would like to believe that the person that's passed over, like they want their memory of them to still live here.
Absolutely. I always think about that movie Coco, the kids movie, right? And I know like that's their traditions, right? And I think that that's actually really cool. To be able to know that like someone's thinking of you. And I think that that's part of it, is looking at a picture and going, oh, do you remember when grandpa took us to the zoo? And right, like it invokes those happy memories. And yeah, some of them can be sad. I still 12 years later cry when I talk about my grandfather, certain things, right? His grief, now I'm going to cry, but his grief, you know, his death really had an impact on my life. But I think that, you know, knowing that my family and everybody was around us, it was different, right? And I still look at his pictures and I still laugh and I still cry, and that's okay. But I know he's here in one way or another. If he lives in my heart or my head, I don't care. He's here.
In terms of when you're working with your clients, how do you even kind of begin to approach grief when working with them, especially if it's their like first holiday without this person in their life?
It's difficult. I think you have to meet people where they're at. So I will always ask them, like, where are we with this? Did this just happen? Did it happen 3 months ago, 6 months ago? How are you feeling around this? What are your thoughts? And you kind of just support them and validate their feelings. And, you know, I always give my clients a little bit of extra support during the time if they need me. They know how to reach me. If they need me, they can. I always give, you know, everyone a book. It's Grief Day by Day. And it literally is just quotes every day about grief. And I tell them, read the quote, think about how it resonates with you, and then write it in your journal. And then we'll talk about it. And one of my clients last year, who lost a loved one, said that was the only reason that she got through the holidays, was because on the day of Thanksgiving, where it was normally at this person's house that had passed, she read the quote of the day, and it was something like, grief is not linear, and it doesn't always have to be the way it needs to be. Like you can grieve the way you need to be. And it just kind of resonated with her, where she was like, I'm okay. It's okay. And she got through the day, and then she called me and she was like, I did it. And then we talked about that. And so that's all you have to do, is just be there. Whether you're a therapist, a person, a sister, a brother, it doesn't matter. Just be there.
And I think that's one of the other things that like we've kind of just talked about in therapy in general. Like if getting through like the week, like you're like, oh, Thanksgiving's the end of this week, I don't know how I'm going to even get through that. Well, don't look at, okay, the month or the holiday season. Break it down. Just try to get through today. If you can't get through today, then try to get through this hour and just take it that way.
Mini goals.
Because there's a lot of things that I think all of us accomplish on a day-to-day basis that we're sometimes really hard on ourselves. Well, why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't be feeling this way. No one's saying, there's not a textbook that's like, okay, this is how you should be feeling when this happens in X, Y, and Z. Yep. You're entitled to your feelings.
I once had a client who came in who did some research on grief therapy, and it made me laugh because they said, well, my husband passed 6 months ago. I should already be in the acceptance phase. And I laughed and I was like, where did you read this?
Who told you that?
Who told you that? That's not a thing. I mean, yes, you could be, but that doesn't mean you have to be. No one wrote a list of by day one you have to do this. It's a process, and that's okay. You could be fine for a year, and then 10 years later, you're back in grief again. That's okay too.
I feel like too, when certain things come up in your life, I'm sure also triggers those types of emotions too that people may not even realize.
Of course, yeah. Weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, other deaths, graduations, anything, it triggers it.
So the last question that I wanted to ask you is, would you be able to share any personal or professional reflections on how managing the holidays can shift after your loss?
Yes. Can I do that without crying? Don't know, but we're going to try. Okay. So I mentioned that my grandfather had passed, and for me, that was always a time where our families just got together, and it was just fun. And so the first holidays without him were difficult. I didn't see them often. They lived in Florida. I did, as I got older, but it was difficult, especially for me, for the Jewish holidays. My grandfather always was very traditional, and he would, read the prayers and do the seders and things like that, and he was no longer there. Mm-hmm. So those things kind of disappeared, mm-hmm. and we didn't want to do them anymore. Mm-hmm. And so it was weird at first, and still, like, to this day, it's a little weird. We don't do a lot of things. So what I can say to people is try and stick to the traditions as much as you can. Try and stick to the things that bring you comfort. And if it's hard, keep trying. And it's okay. Like, we still do some things, but we don't do everything. Mm-hmm. And we talk about it, and we leave a chair for him. Just little things to mm-hmm. bring humor, and that's okay.
So with traditions, though, like, that is something that he maybe implemented during the holidays with you guys, but that doesn't mean that, one, like you said, you can make your own traditions and then see what works best for you guys. So you guys may decide, like, oh, well, this is something that we want to take, and this is something that, it maybe hurts a little too much right now. So this is what we're going to do instead to represent him and still celebrate this time all together as a family.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the modified version.
Yeah.
But it's still part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay.
Absolutely. Well, Aly, we're just getting to the end of our episode. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And a huge thank you to Aly for sharing her expertise on coping with grief during the holidays. Remember, it's okay to feel a mix of emotions this season, allowing space for grief while also finding moments of joy as part of the healing process. If you or someone you know is struggling, don't hesitate to reach out for support. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Tree of Life Counseling Center, for their commitment to mental health. Until next time, take care of yourselves, each other, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.